Michael Carter stepped off the black SUV, his sunglasses reflecting the bright Philippine sun. Behind him, workers rushed to finish his multi-million-dollar resort on the pristine beach of Leyte. The design was modern: glass walls, steel beams, imported marble floors. It was meant to stand as a symbol of sophistication. Just a few meters away, Michael noticed an old man tying bamboo poles together, whistling softly under a mango tree. To Michael, it looked like a joke. Mang Pedro barely looked up. With his bare hands, he tied the bamboo joints with native rattan, humming an old Visayan tune. His granddaughter, Lena, fetched him tools and watched silently. Michael chuckled and said to his workers, "This is why the world calls it Third World, building homes with grass." Everyone laughed. But Mang Pedro only smiled, whispering, "Let the storm decide which house is stronger." The two constructions grew side by side, the towering resort gleaming in the sun, and the humble bamboo house rising quietly nearby. Michael's workers carried heavy steel and concrete, while Mang Pedro worked with bamboo and nipa leaves. Each strike of his bolo carried rhythm and wisdom, earned from years of experience. Lena often watched Michael's team with fascination. "Lolo, why don't you build like them, with iron and cement?" He smiled. "Because, child, the earth teaches us how to live with her, not fight her." She didn't understand fully yet, but those words would soon echo in her heart. By the third week, Michael's resort was almost complete. He invited local officials to admire his masterpiece. They clapped and praised his architectural brilliance. From across the field, Mang Pedro kept working quietly. When Michael saw him, he smirked and said loudly, "Old man, your little hut won't survive one good storm." Mang Pedro raised his head and replied calmly, "Maybe, but I build homes to breathe with the wind, not to fight it." His answer drew laughter from the crowd, but Lena looked at her grandfather with pride. Somewhere deep down, Michael felt a strange irritation. How could a poor man be so confident? That evening, a local fisherman ran past shouting that a strong typhoon was coming. The winds had already started to change, and the sea grew restless. Michael looked up at the sky but dismissed the warning. "My building is engineered to withstand anything," he told his foreman. "It's made of the best materials money can buy." Mang Pedro, however, stopped working immediately. He told Lena to gather dried food and tie down loose items. He said, "Nature speaks before she strikes. You only survive if you listen." The contrast between their preparations was night and day. One trusted science, the other trusted nature. When night fell, the air felt heavy and the ocean roared louder. Michael sipped a drink on his resort's balcony, admiring the glow of his glass walls. "This is what real architecture looks like," he said proudly. In the distance, he could see Mang Pedro's small bamboo home swaying gently in the wind like it was alive. Lena peeked through the bamboo window at Michael's resort gleaming like a palace. "Lolo, his house doesn't move like ours." Pedro smiled faintly. "That's why it will break, Anak. What bends doesn't break." His words were swallowed by the rising wind. The typhoon made landfall just past midnight. Winds screamed like angry spirits, tearing palm trees from their roots. The sea invaded the shore, smashing anything in its path. Michael's resort, with its glass walls and metal frames, began to tremble. Bolts flew, roofs peeled, and windows shattered like falling stars. Inside, Michael shouted orders, but his men fled. The wind's roar drowned his voice. Meanwhile, Mang Pedro's bamboo house danced with the storm, creaking, bending, and breathing with the wind. Rain poured through the thatch roof, but the walls stood firm, swaying like bamboo should. When the storm reached its peak, Michael's resort groaned like a dying beast. One loud crack echoed, and then silence. The magnificent structure collapsed under its own pride. Concrete broke, glass flew, and steel twisted like paper. Michael barely escaped, crawling into the rain-soaked darkness. At the same time, Mang Pedro held Lena close as the wind rattled their walls. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Bamboo bows to the wind and rises again." By dawn, the storm finally calmed, leaving a broken world behind. When the sun rose, it revealed a landscape of ruin. Michael's million-dollar resort was gone, nothing but wreckage. His heart sank. He walked barefoot among the ruins, disbelief on his face. But then, something caught his eye. A small bamboo house still standing by the mango tree. Mang Pedro's home was untouched, except for a few fallen leaves. Lena stepped out holding a pot of warm soup. She saw Michael and whispered to her grandfather, "Lolo, that man has nowhere to go." Pedro nodded and said softly, "Then we must help him." Michael stood in front of the bamboo house, drenched and broken. When Mang Pedro invited him in, he hesitated. "I can't accept this," he said weakly. Pedro smiled. "A home built with kindness always has room." Michael entered and felt the warmth of the small room. No marble, no glass, just love and care. Lena offered him food. He took it, staring at the bamboo walls that had endured nature's fury. For the first time, the proud architect felt small, not because of his loss, but because of his ignorance. As they sat together, Mang Pedro shared his wisdom. "Your building fought the storm," he said. "Mine danced with it. Nature doesn't respect strength, it respects balance." Michael listened silently. The words pierced deeper than any insult. He realized his design ignored the land's spirit. He had built a monument for pride, not harmony. That night he couldn't sleep. The sound of wind brushing through bamboo haunted him. It felt like the earth whispering truth. The next morning, Michael stood before Mang Pedro. "I mocked you. I thought your ways were old, but you were wiser than I'll ever be," he said sincerely. Pedro smiled. "You're not the first man to learn from a storm. What matters is that you listened before it was too late." Lena clapped her hands and giggled. "Maybe you can build a new house, sir, this time with bamboo." Michael laughed for the first time in days. "Yes, little one, maybe I will." Weeks later, Michael began rebuilding, but this time under Mang Pedro's guidance. He cut bamboo, learned how to tie joints, and even thatched roofs with Lena. The work was simple, yet it felt deeply meaningful. For the first time, Michael wasn't building for fame. He was building for life. Villagers watched in amazement as the foreign architect worked side by side with the old carpenter. "Look at that! The storm didn't just destroy, it changed hearts." Months passed and a new resort began to rise, not from steel and glass, but from bamboo and local materials. He designed it to breathe, to sway, and to blend with nature. He called it Balay ng Hangin, the House of the Wind. When it opened, people were stunned. It wasn't the tallest or flashiest, but it was the most peaceful and beautiful. The architecture sang with the spirit of the Philippines, and it stood as a symbol of harmony between man and nature. During the opening ceremony, Michael stood beside Mang Pedro and Lena. Reporters asked him what inspired his new design. He smiled and said, "An old carpenter and a storm taught me more than any university ever could." Pedro chuckled softly, looking at his granddaughter. "The young must learn from the old, and the wise must stay humble. That's how we build not just houses, but lives." The crowd applauded as the wind gently passed through the bamboo walls, whispering approval. That night, Michael sat on the porch of his new bamboo resort, listening to the wind play through the trees. The storm had taken his pride, but given him wisdom. Mang Pedro's laughter echoed nearby, and Lena sang softly under the moonlight. He finally understood, real strength isn't in concrete or steel, it's in understanding, humility, and respect for the land. The typhoon didn't destroy him, it rebuilt him. And in that peaceful moment, he whispered, "Now I see. The storm wasn't my enemy, it was my teacher."